Welcome to Sunshine Cathedral's Queer God Squad. It's Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. I'm Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins, the Senior Minister here at Sunshine Cathedral.
I am Reverend Dr. Robert Griffin, the Executive Minister. Faith and religion can be complicated for the LGBTQ+ community. Surveys show that evangelical faith is the justification for the greatest attacks on the LGBTQ+ community.
I am Reverend Kevin Tisdall, the Minister of Education. The Queer God Squad is going to explore our religious community. Let's explore the big news of the day and what it means to you.
I am Reverend Dr. Ann Atwell, the Minister of Connections. This is live, and then we are available on demand. If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Join the conversation on your favorite streaming platform and social media.
At Sunshine Cathedral, we're here to tell you that you're God's miracle, not God's mistake. This is the Sunshine Cathedral perspective. Time to end bottom shaming. Jorge Rodriguez-Jimenez, writing for The Advocate, says that bottom shaming can actually contribute to the spread of HIV. According to Daniel Pullen, a professor of classics and chairman of the department at Florida State University, quote, bottom shaming is nothing new and has always been partly about power. In fact, there is evidence of bottom shaming as far back as ancient Greek and Roman societies, in which to be so-called violated would strip one of citizenship, end quote. Jimenez suggests that men being afraid of being judged to be overly feminine might keep them from seeking PrEP, which is 99% effective in preventing the spread of HIV. It is believed that those who bottom are at somewhat higher risk for catching STIs, and yet it was from someone who topped them that they likely received the infection. Still, bottoms are judged to be less manly and more likely to have infections, and that stigma may prevent some from seeking the help that could actually help them stay healthy. Those who top and those who bottom clearly need one another, so maybe it's time to end the bottom shaming, and all of us can do what we can to stay healthy and to keep our partners safe. This is about ethics, morality, and embodied spirituality, so of course, the Queer God Squad has some thoughts on the matter. It shouldn't be provocative, but we're still so closed off, still so priggish, still so prudish that it's difficult to talk about this. And it's true, though, that there's a lot of jokes in the gay male community about bottoms. Bottoms tell the jokes, too. I mean, it's sort of funny, but it's also self-deprecating when the bottom does it. It's sometimes demoralizing when other people do it. There are a lot of assumptions made about it. And I wonder why it's such a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, I sort of bottom by default. It was never like a passion, you know what I mean? But it's, you know, people like it, so, you know, I'm good for whatever. But certain things happen maybe with your health or your age, or, you know, and I've got back issues, and, you know, so not the bottom I once was. But there's so many other things, you know, so if you can't do that, like, there's just so, I think we just cheat ourselves when we act like sex is about somebody's on top, someone's on bottom, and then there's a mess. That's okay. That's one way. That's one way. But there's a million other ways. I remember a lesbian professor of mine said in seminary, when someone said, "Well, you know, men and women just fit together," and she said, "Lots of parts fit into lots of parts. It's not a boy girl thing." And, you know, she made a gesture with her digits, and, you know, whatever. So there's just lots of ways of cuddling and sharing intimacy, and if it's just about that, then if you have hemorrhoids, if you have prostate issues, if you have if erectile dysfunction that the meds can't help, if you have so many things, then what are you left with? Surely the answer isn't nothing. Surely you can still, whether that means bringing in sex toys, or that means the more gentle cuddling, kissing, hugging parts of it instead of the penetrative parts. I just think we've made too much of it. Now, if you like it, you like it, and there's nothing wrong with it, and, you know, have a good time. But also, it's not the be all end all, if it were, as it were, of lovemaking, right? So And I also think that most of the shame, and the advocate writer mentioned it sort of in passing, but I think most of the shame is actually misogynistic.
Oh yeah.
That one party is viewed to be too feminine, which means there's something wrong with being feminine, which is an insult to women. So first of all, there's nothing. I remember someone who identified as bottom saying, "There's nothing passive about being a good bottom." So it's not about passivity. It's not about femininity. It's about nerve endings and preferences and enjoyment. And if you can't do it forever, it's about finding alternatives. But lovemaking is communication. Lovemaking is sharing. Lovemaking is, it's physical, but at its best, it's more than physical. And if it is more than physical, then you're not left with nothing when the physics change. And if you live long enough, they might change, you know. But people do worry about it. People worry about if they have if they have breast surgery, if they have gastric bypass, if they have rectal surgeries. They worry about, how's my partner going to view me, or how's this going to affect our intimacy or whatever. And I think if you're close enough, it doesn't have to. In fact, it might even get better. Who knows? But this idea of identifying with one body part or one action, I think that's limiting us. And I think the time will come, if you live long enough, where it's actually going to rob you of some joy. Yeah. So, yeah, bottom away if that's your thing, but don't judge it, and also be more than that. I think if I were celibate, if I joined a monastery and became celibate, I would still be gay, and I would still remember my sexual experiences fondly. And so, yeah, don't so identify with it that there's nothing else to you, because that's not true. And also don't be mean about what brings other people pleasure. What's it to you? And if you're a top and they're a bottom, I'll tell you what it is to you: lucky. So,
and see, there's the whole thing. A lot of times people don't say top or bottom; they'll say who's the boy and who's the girl.
Cringe.
And that is just cringeworthy, because you're trying to put a square peg in a round circle, kind of.
I knew where you were going there, Kevin.
Yeah, get rid of that from your heads. But I'm sure people are sitting there right now going, why are church people talking about this? And the answer,
is this not a church topic?
and the answer is, it is a church topic. Yeah. This is what the people in our community are talking about. These are the things that people in our community are going through. And as a part of that community, Sunshine Cathedral, I think, has a responsibility to share with our community the thoughts on many topics, especially this topic that it may be close to home for some people.
Oh, of course.
People may have never even thought about the misogyny in it. They may have not have thought about the shaming that goes with it.
Or the risk.
Yeah.
That if I don't want to be identified as bottom, so I don't get tested or treatment.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now my health is at risk.
In trouble.
Or what?
Then I'm going to
because I don't want you to make fun of me.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And that's why we at this church, Sunshine Cathedral, talk about everything. We talk about it as often as possible and as open as possible. I don't think that many churches you would go to where you would find one of your pastors talking about his personal life. And I love that we're able to do that here.
And with some trepidation. I mean, there are social taboos, which, because of social taboo, but not because of sin, not because of morality. No. Like there's social taboos, like you wouldn't belch at the dinner table. It's that sort of taboo. It's just not done. So since it's not done very often, people don't know how to do it comfortably.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. But that's the reason why it must be done.
Yes.
That's why we have to struggle through it and try to talk about it, because people fall in love, or people want to have company for the night. Either way, and things happen, and they want. And if you can't talk about how much joy it brought you, or how much confusion it brought you, or well, what are we as a community if we can't talk about it and love each other through that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Reverend Kevin, you just said something that struck me as kind of interesting, that you'd never considered the misogyny that was part of this.
Yeah.
And as soon as I read this, that's the first thing I thought of.
Wow.
That there's significant misogyny because they're identifying someone who is a bottom as a girl.
You big girl.
And exactly. Yeah. And that's demeaning to women. That's demeaning to the feminine, however you choose to identify. That's the very first thing that I thought of. And let's face it, there is a significant amount of misogyny in the gay men's community. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to put it right out there.
100%.
I'm going to put it right out there. So seeing this does not surprise me. Not at all.
Right. that it hurts them. I mean,
Right, exactly,
that
exactly.
they unleash their fear of or discomfort with women on each other.
Exactly.
Or can do.
To be
Many do.
identified as feminine is a bad thing.
I think the thing that hits here is that this would never have been the dinner conversation that probably at anybody's house. And that the level of, and I'm going to use the word shame, that goes along with just sex, first of all, period. Just the shame related to sex, period. And then when you break it down to this category, there is the misogyny, there's the shaming of what you may do and you enjoy. And then it's like having to say, okay, how do we peel that onion back? That this becomes even acceptable conversation to have in a healthy and positive way, and that we can begin to take away the shame that goes along with it. Because as long as there's shame, it leads to unethical or it leads to behavior that leads to other things. Because if I'm ashamed of this, then I'm not going to be open and honest about what it is I'm doing, and then I will not seek the treatment that I need because of the shame that goes with it, or because of the stigma that goes with it, or because of the stereotype that goes with it. So I think we have to provide the circles where we that we talk about these things. And I'm just going in the African American community. This is the kind of stuff that black folks don't talk about.
Right.
You know, they may snap the fingers, girl this, girl that, all that goes on. But when it comes down to it, there's a segment of the African American community that will still be ruled over religion and shame and talking about sex and all that implies, which, back in the AIDS days, that was a big deal in the black church. It took the black church about as long to talk about it as Ronald Reagan did, even mentioned. So when you can get down to this lens of what happens in the gay community, then this is just one of those reminders we still have work to do. All of it may bring pleasure, and yet there's a level that is still there that has to be tapped into, if you will, to say, let's break this open some more.
But if we're not going to talk about how to be healthy, then we're not a model of health. We're not a healing ministry. I remember in the 90s, if you went to a sex club in San Francisco, you had to pass a test to get in. There'd be a page, a 2-page thing of safe sex practices. Then the guy at the desk would ask you one of the questions at random, and if you got the answer wrong, see ya. So you were given a condom, and you were given your towel, and you're given the key to your locker, and you're given all this stuff. But before you got all that, you had a test, because they were just taking that seriously.
Yes.
Without just shutting it all down and saying sex is ugly or whatever. They were like, let's figure out a way to keep each other alive and still be the sexual beings we are. And I just think that was a much healthier model than the churches were providing.
I just
where let's lie about it or hide it or shame it or condemn it or just add to all of these terrible hang-ups. Whereas these people were just like, okay, if you could do this, we're going to make sure you do it safely.
As safe as possible.
That was a part of this. It was called street smart when I was a kid growing up, because street smart meant you got to talk about things with your friends that you did not talk about at home. And so this is one of those areas, just sex period, where my friends say, how street smart are you in the area of sex? Well, unless you talk about it, it wasn't going to happen. And I think this is another one of those things that, I'm just reminded of the street smart that goes along with this, because people don't want to talk about it. And then they take unnecessary risk and unnecessary behaviors. And yes, there's PrEP, there's all this other stuff that goes along with it. We know a lot more today than we did previously, but yet there's still that element of being street smart about it.
And there are people who are afraid to get on PrEP because that they think people make assumptions about that.
Exactly.
And that they would be embarrassed by that. Our kid is, I'm so just free and open and out there, and I just have no hang-ups until you have kids, because he really doesn't. And he will just say things and ask things, and thank God he will. And that's pushed me to be, okay, I can talk about this with a 17-year-old, I can talk about this with an 18-year-old, I can talk about this with a 19-year-old. And thank God that he wants to. And he is on PrEP, and I'm so proud of him. And he's waiting to get his HPV vaccine, and I'm like, okay, we're good at, we've done a good job educating or whatever.
Exactly.
But you can't let discomfort of, our little, our precious angel or whatever is having sex. Well, of course he is. What were you doing at 23? Of course he is. And how great that his dads are who he will talk to about it. So I didn't have that. I promise you. So I think we should be offering that to everyone. Maybe you didn't get that at home. You should be able to get it at church. But
Yes.
if we just assume that the body is bad and that sex is bad and that homosexuality is bad and that everything is bad, well, I'm not talking to you about anything.
Yeah,
If everything that's going on with me is bad, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, and I think we should declare Sunshine Cathedral is a sex-positive atmosphere place.
Absolutely.
You know, there's no shame in our game.
Nope, not even a little bit.
I've seen over the years, how many times have we seen somebody come in looking almost like the wrath of God because they've had such a long, rough night, and but there's their date with them. They're dragging their date to church,
Yep.
and that's happened a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
Where the night before actually ends with worship on Sunday, and then they go.
They come in with the same clothes and they got the wristband on.
Yep.
That's all right. The
Stamp.
stamp on their hand. Yep.
and
That's all
Oh,
right.
the names we used to call
I
that.
love that so much.
Oh my God.
I
Yep.
love that so much. So, no bottom shaming, no top shaming, no celibacy
No shame.
shaming,
No shaming.
no
No
triad shaming, just no shaming.
Yeah.
Work out we all have our own boundaries. We all have our own limits. You work that out with your partner. You live by it. You honor your commitment. Life is good.
Yes.
Live your life.
Absolutely.
And that's certainly our attitude at the Sunshine Cathedral. Well, that's today with the Queer God Squad. We want to thank you for joining us. We're here daily at 3 p.m. to have some fun and to discuss what our LGBTQ plus community is talking about.
The Sunshine Cathedral is the world's largest progressive queer church. Progressive, queer, and God are words that naturally should go together. And we are all in this together. Remember that.
You are God's miracle, not God's mistake.
Until next time, we are the Queer God Squad. Goodbye.